Thank you all for coming. My name is Carl Ekstrom. This is a great day for the MBTA and for the Draw 1 Bridge Replacement Project. Welcome to our industry forum. As I said, my name is Carl. I am the project manager for this endeavor and have been involved in the job since 2019. So we have a lot to talk about, and just thrilled to have you all here in the room and online. So as we get started, I just have a few bits of housekeeping. Just for the folks that are in the room, if there is an emergency and we have to vacate the building, the stairs and escalator are right here outside the door. The muster point is out the doorway through over by the Dunkin' Donuts and across the hall here, or across the street to the corner of Stewart and, I lost my, it's not Nealand, it's Charles and Stewart, sorry. This corner over here by the hotel. We just ask that you stay put so we can kind of take numbers. We do have an attendance list of who's come into the room. And we'll leave that at that. I have a few items just at the MBTA. We are a public agency. We don't discriminate on any type of race, color, or creed. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that this meeting is open to all, and we're thrilled to have you here. If there's more information about our civil rights program online, there's a link in the slides. This presentation will be available on our website after the presentation, not immediately. It will take us a little time to get it transferred, but there will be the ability to see that. For those that are online, there is a chat feature in the Zoom webinar. We ask that you, if you have any technical questions, or later when we do our Q&A, that you use that feature, and we'll either read the questions aloud or we will have you come off mute at the appropriate time. So, same for in the room. You can save your questions till the end. We'll have a person with a mic come to your way, and that way everybody can hear the questions as they're asked. I just went through for the folks online, but raising your hand. If there is a technical issue, we have a team over here that will try and work in the background to help you with if there are any technical difficulties on the webinar version. So, a little bit of an agenda. We'll have some opening remarks by guest speakers, and then Mark and I will go through the Draw 1 program presentation, and then at the end we'll have a time for questions and answers. So that's a real high-level agenda. And as you can see, there's a high-level view of the site. Just a few quick things to point out. The drawbridge is right smack in the middle of the Charles River. We're looking in southbound towards North Station and the TD Bank Garden, which is the facility where the Celtics and the Bruins play, directly above our station. And you can kind of see the complexity and the uniqueness of this bridge replacement project site. Boston Sand and Gravel is off to your left. We'll go through more of these in a few minutes, but that's just one thing that we wanted to point out. You know, from a high-level standpoint, this is a high-level project, and it's constrained by a lot of things on many sides. So just thank you for your interest in talking about it. So we have a special guest. He's not in the room, but he's going to be on the screen. Our general manager is out of town on vacation or personal leave, has been gone this week, but he's excited that you're all here, and he's prepared some words to welcome you to the event. So.
Hi everyone, Phil Ing, MBTA General Manager. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to the MBTA's Draw 1 Industry Forum. The North Station Draw 1 Bridge, right behind me here, connects the cities of Boston and all the communities to the north. This roughly $1.2 billion project will be one of the largest infrastructure investments in recent MBTA history. It entails replacing the bridges, a control tower, extending the bridge platform, extending tracks to the existing network, and making various other upgrades that allow us to keep passenger service running while constructing. Today you'll hear presentations by Carl Ekstrom, MBTA Senior Director of Bridges and Tunnels. He will discuss the project in more detail, including our goals, our objectives, and the challenges that we will face together. And we will answer your questions. More importantly, we want to hear from you. We want to learn from your past experiences in delivering similar sized, similar complex projects. And that feedback will help us develop strategies to ensure that we put out a project that can allow you to price and schedule this project accordingly. I hope through this forum, partnerships will form from the contracting industry that will result in a better product for the MBTA and all of our riders that depend on our service to get them where they need to go safely and reliably. Thank you everyone for being here today.
My thanks to the GM. He's been a great advocate for this project. And speaking of which, one of our partners on the federal side of the house is the FTA. We have initiated a NEPA clearing for the documentation and also for the use of federal funds to help pay for this project. The FTA has been involved basically since day one with our team, talking through the challenges and the need to keep operations moving on one of the busiest stations in the Northeast. So we have Pete Butler here today. He's the Region 1 Administrator, and he's going to say a few words to this group and online. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Carl. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Secretary Buttigieg and FTA Deputy Administrator Vanderpool, I'm just so excited to be with you all for the Construction Industry Forum for North Station Trial 1 Replacement Project. At FTA, it is our mission to improve America's communities through public transportation. Thanks to the IIJA, the U.S. DOT is carrying out ambitious, complex transportation projects that will shape our country's infrastructure for generations to come. We are so proud of everything we've been able to accomplish towards that mission. To that end, the Draw 1 replacement project represents one of the largest federal infrastructure investments for the MBTA in the region. The $472 million awarded to the MBTA under the National Infrastructure Project Assistance Program represents the largest federal discretionary grant award the MBTA has won to date. Regional rail continues to grow, and this project is critical, not only preserving but expanding passenger service in the Northeast. The Draw 1 Bridge is a crucial access point for the MBTA and Amtrak, serving more than 11 million riders annually. The project will reduce operational maintenance costs for the MBTA. Most importantly, the bridge is designed to be resilient and accommodates the potential for flooding and anticipated sea level rise. The project will improve environmental outcomes by reducing fuel consumption and allowing for potential electrification in the future. Lastly, I would like to thank the MBTA for hosting this event and for our industry partners. I welcome the participation for the construction contractor community in learning more about this transformational project. And thank you all for your continued partnership to deliver the important work for moving our region and our nation forward. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you, Pete. Also with us today, I have invited Mike Muller. Mike is the Executive Director of MBTA's Commuter Rail and Ferry Network. Not only is he concerned about the north side and North Station Draw 1, but he's concerned about the entirety of our commuter rail system. So, Mike, if you want to.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. So The reason that I wanted to talk to you today is to let you know how critically important this particular project is to our current commuter rail system, as well as the regional rail system that we are embarking on transforming our existing legacy network into. If I had to name one project that would be the most critical piece of our vision for modernizing the system, it would be Draw 1. I spend a lot of time at conferences and in meetings and speaking to groups like this about our vision for regional rail, our high-frequency, decarbonized system. And I talk a lot about electrification and power infrastructure and higher frequency and station projects. We can do all of that, and we will do all of that, but none of it amounts to a hill of beans on the north side if we don't do North Station Draw. That's the reason why it is the #1 highest priority infrastructure project for the commuter rail system. Just to give you some context, a third of our ridership and our train service is on the north side. It's 4 lines: the Fitchburg line, the Haverhill line, the Lowell line, and the Newburyport-Rockport line. It's about 160 trains per weekday out of the overall 500 trains we operate on commuter rail, and it's about 30,000 passengers per weekday. 2 of the highest ridership stations on the entire system, Salem and Beverly Depot, are on the north side. So this really is an existential piece of infrastructure that provides a gateway to the entire north side of our system to Boston. So you understand that without Draw 1, without a fully functioning operational Draw 1, we don't have a north side service. A lot of what you're going to hear about the design and the plan for the project involves replacing a critical asset. It's also important for the purposes of our plans with the regional rail and higher frequency service that we increase the track capacity of Draw 1 so that even more trains in the future can utilize this critical asset to connect the north side to Boston. Over time, our plans are to go from what's currently anywhere from 30-minute to 60-minute headways on the north side to 20 to 30-minute headways system-wide. So you can do the simple math. Our vision in the next 10 to 15 years is to actually double the amount of trains going over Draw 1. And providing that level of service to the communities that depend on us for their commute. So again, thank you for coming today and listening to us. I wanted to make sure that you all understood how critically important this is to not just our capital program at the MBTA, but to the future of the regional rail network. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to welcome Sam Zhao. Sam is our Chief Engineer and Assistant GM for Capital Programs. So, Sam.
Good morning. You can also call me Phil, the Boulder Phil. Welcome to the North Station Draw 1 Bridge Briefing Industry Forum. It is truly my honor to see so many esteemed professionals from all different aspects of the industry, the construction, the professional services, and also we have some DBEs participating. So it's a good thing. So your presence is really speak volumes of your interest and commitment to advance this infrastructure that millions of people depend on. The North Station Draw 1 Bridge is a cornerstone of the MBTA infrastructure. It is vital not only because from the operational point of view, but also it is vital to the local economy. It is a cornerstone, it is a gateway to the Boston and beyond. And the bridge is an integral part of our effort modernizing and expanding our infrastructure in the MBTA system. We are especially proud that this project is being supported by US DOT and FTA, our partners, with the unprecedented $472 million. This historic level of support really underscores the importance of this project, as Mike Moeller also mentioned. This forum is really a platform for collaboration. This is not only an opportunity for you to hear what this project is about, the challenges that we're facing, but also we're eager to hear your thoughts on procurement strategies, potential risks, and the best practices that you have in a similar project in other side of the nation. Your input certainly will be invaluable as we chart the best path forward. I also want to say this is an opportunity for you to foster some partnership. We have all aspects of industry sitting here. We don't know, we haven't really decided the form of the procurement yet, but it's never too early to form alliances. Also team up with some local companies, especially the DBEs, MWBEs, and veterans businesses. This is also will support the local economy. I want to point it out, this forum is not part of the procurement process. This is actually predate, the procurement. So I would encourage a live discussion, Q&A session. Following this forum, we have the project visitation this afternoon. And then for the next 2 days, we also have one-on-ones with specific construction contractors who are interested in this project in the future. So this is another opportunity for us to have a dialogue, to exchange thoughts and ideas and questions. And the goal is to make this a successful project. With that, thank you for coming again. Looking forward to have a great discussion and dialogue with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. So for today's presentation, we'll do a quick look at the agenda. We'll talk about why this project is needed. You've heard some comments on that already. We'll talk about program goals, the project description. We'll look at some challenges. We'll talk about the funding that's in place for this job. We'll look at our NEPA review process, and then we'll talk a little bit about details for this afternoon's site tour and access to the North Station. Again, my name is Carl Ekstrom. I'm the MBTA project manager for this project. With me today for presentation purposes is Mark Ennis. Mark is the PM from STV. STV is our design consultant for the bridge replacement. Their team consists of HNTB is the track and signals designer. Bryan Engineering is the surveyor. We have TRC as an environmental consultant. City Point Partners / HDR is our public outreach consultant. And CNC is a DBE doing some structural computations and design efforts as well. So we have a broad team. We have a lot of horsepower on the design side. I've been thankful to work with such a great group of professionals, and I want to thank them for helping us set this up today and the feedback that they're going to bring your way. So we'll get started. So why is it needed? As Mike alluded to, this is the north side pinch point. Everything that comes into or out of Boston from that side comes across these two bridges. We have the Fitchburg line off to the northwest. We have the Lowell line, again to the northwest, north to Haverhill, and then Railroad East to Rockport and Newburyport. So all four lines come together to cross 4 tracks on the Charles River. And so that's 8 that have to get down to 4. So you can kind of do the math that there's a constriction point. And operations becomes a challenge to get trains not only in or out of the station, but across the river. If there's a problem with one of the bridges, it can really start delaying and altering service because only certain parts of the station go to certain parts of the bridges, the two bridges. So once you get across the bridge or coming into the station, if things aren't lined up right, when you get to a certain point, you're kind of forced to go across one of the two bridges, not necessarily either bridge. So that becomes an issue with our current track operations, and that's one of the items that we're going to look to improve. It's not only a bridge project, but there's track and signal improvement that is much needed and desired from our operations team. And as Mike mentioned, we have almost 11 million people that come through. I forgot to mention and highlight the fact that the Amtrak Downeaster coming from Maine travels across the bridge. They have 7 trips a day in and out of North Station. So they are a great partner, but they also rely on the bridge coming down the Lowell line. So as far as some of the existing conditions, you can see some photographs here. These are one of the main caisson supports for the drawbridge. These were built in 1930. They didn't have an infinite life. We're almost at 100 years. We're 90 plus, and they are just ready to be retired, both from a usage standpoint and condition standpoint. We have been seeing a lot of fatigue cracking on the curved girder bottom flanges for the track girders on the bascule span. We've been addressing those, and we have a frequent inspections, increased inspection cycle. We're down to 6 months on some elements, just to kind of stay on top of conditions and be able to keep the bridges not only safe but operational, because the issues that we're seeing are more impactful to the operation of the bascule span than it is of the safe carrying load capacity of the bridge. There's been a rising cost, as I mentioned, in maintenance. We've been in 2022 and again in 2023, we had several weekends where we were out doing steel repairs and fixing up some of the issues that have been documented in our inspection program. So it seems like we're having to spend more and more money to kind of keep these bridges working while we complete the design process, and that's something that can't continue indefinitely. Eventually the bridges are going to just be no longer serviceable. But until that time comes, we're actively working on keeping them safe and reliable for daily operation. So you can see also in the photo, this is the original Control Tower A building, also vintage 1930. The building is no longer used by personnel. The equipment and the operation controls for the actual raising and lowering of the bridge was moved to a temporary control tower just adjacent to the site. You'll see that this afternoon. But the only thing in the building now is electrical and signal equipment that controls, help to control the bridge from the temporary site. We are working on a plan now to temporarily set up a new MCC center and get that equipment out so that if the building were to come down around it, the bridge will still be functional. So that is something that we're doing in the immediate with existing contracts and planned work, but that'll be something that will enable some of the work that we have to do later in the Draw One program. So those poles, I don't know if they're actually doing anything, but they've been there for as long as I've been a T employee, and it's a rudimentary bracing if nothing else. But one of the highlights of that picture is the Boston and Maine Control Tower A placard. We've done some testing, and we hope to be able to salvage that for use as a display piece somewhere on the either MBTA property or adjacent parkland. There's been some interest to kind of preserve that piece of the historic nature of this project. It's our original roots, so we want to be respectful of that, and that's some of the discussions that have been going on in the 106 consultations with the NEPA environmental assessment that we're currently engaged in. So. Let's talk a little bit about the approaches. There's over 1,400 timber piles, again, since 1930, that have been in the Charles River. There was a historic fire back in the late 80s. The south approach, which is the larger of the two to the left, was severely damaged, and it closed all operations at North Station for commuter rail for about 6 months while they went through with an emergency design and repair contract. But those are the piles that support the replacement structure on that side of the river is still have been assessed, and we've determined that they're not suitable for reuse in the future project. So all of those piles will have to be contemplated with while we do the construction of new substructure adjacent to and in the river as well. So that's one of the challenges, and one of the needs is just the amount of structure that is out there carrying all those tracks. We'll talk, I mentioned steel repairs. There has been a significant effort to kind of watch and look after the bridge when it either opens or closes at the final stage. The lockdown mechanism has shown its issues with being able to operate, and we've had to do some modifications there, but the bridge really kind of comes down and sort of wiggles into place, and all of that extra movement and issues when we get into temperature extremes or high, either high or low, we tend to have problems with getting the bridge to seat properly. We can even see a little bit of movement at the track girders due to the way the bridge kind of shifts and jimmies into final position. So that's one of the things that we've been concerned about and watching. I mentioned the relocation of the electrical equipment. Instead of actually moving that equipment, we're going to be replacing it with in-kind new, and being able to retire that and keep operations moving should there be issues with the building that the equipment is currently housed in. We have done some steel repairs and other items on the movable equipment over the years. One of the other issues that the maintenance team is having is that a lot of this equipment is from the 1930s. They're not sitting on a shelf somewhere. They have to custom make or do ad hoc type things to get the same functionality, but with modern equipment. So there's a real need to kind of retire these bridges and put in a modern replacement. So that is our ultimately that's our goal and that's our need. We do have some repairs in mind with the timber trestles as well, just from a condition state on some of the timber stringers. That's something we're going to be looking to address in the coming future before the project gets into full construction on the south approach. So let's talk about program goals. One of the largest things here, you can see a picture of a rendering of the completed work. Those are our 3 vertical lift spans. But those will be modern structures, but also we're going to modernize and improve operations for the signal system. Some of this signal work system has been out there since original construction. I'm told that it's like driving down a country road in comparison to some of our other areas of the railroad. It's just there has not been an opportunity to improve track signals because of the bridges, or improve the bridge because of the track system. So that is one of the things that we've tied together is enhancing and improving operational resiliency and also flexibility. We're going to allow trains that are coming in or out to cross over or realign onto other tracks so that there's the ability, if one of the bridges was out for an issue, that they could still get multiple lines in and out of North Station and use as many of the platforms as possible and not tie half of the station to one bridge and the other half to the second bridge, which is our current condition state. So we're going to look to improve service and reliability by increasing the more frequent traffic. Also, we're going to be extending a platform we call Platform F. It's our 6th station platform. It actually exists within the building footprint, and stub tracks are actually on either side of it today. We'll be extending that out some 500 feet or so and tying it into track 10 before you get to the river, but that'll allow 2 more locations for trains to be loaded and unloaded at North Station without changing the building footprint, without changing fare gates. We'll put a new doorway out there, but those are things that we can do as part of this project and program to allow operations to better serve our customers. And as Mike mentioned, this program is vital to maintain the current service as well as to improve service in the future. So we're thinking about today, but we're also thinking about tomorrow and the next 100 years. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mark Ennis. Mark is the project manager and has been the project manager since that contract started in 2019. And Mark's going to go through some of the project scope and description in a little more detail, and then we'll be back.
Thank you, Carl. Just before getting going with the presentation, I'd just like to take a moment to further introduce the design team who are here today. From STV, Marion Barth is our principal in charge, and Heather Moulton, our deputy project manager. We have HNTB here, and their team with Brian McDonald is here to answer questions as they may arise. I believe Jeff Brandt from TRC is here. Great. Good to see you, Jeff. We have Marty Nee of HDR leading the public outreach process. And we might have Kevin Stewart here. Is Kevin here? Kevin of RDV led the effort to produce the animated rendering, which will show up later in the presentation. Turning to the site itself, this is yet another aerial view of the site. At the very bottom of the screen, marked by the letter G, you might be able to make out the building there. That's North Station. And then the tracks move out of North Station up over the Draw 1 bridge, which is at the center of the screen, marked by the letter E. As probably most people are familiar with the site will know, but there's immediately on the downstream side of the bridge is the Leverett Circle connector and also the Leonard's Aiken Bridge. And then just beyond that, marked by the letter I, is the Charles River Dam structure, which is operated by the DCR. On the other side of the bridge, on the upstream side, the river is flanked by 2 parks. On the north side is the North Point Bridge, the North Point Park, and on the south side is the Nashua Street Park. And as Carl mentioned, another couple of interesting properties to be aware of. At the very top of the screen, marked by the letter B, is Boston Sand and Gravel. And then on the south side of the river, immediately adjacent to the tracks, is the MGH building marked by the letter H. And that's the old Spalding Rehab building that was of old. Now, MGH not only owned the building, but they own most of the parking lot that extends back from that building towards North Station. So coming out a little further, and this is another overall view of the site. In this orientation, North Station is over here to the left-hand side of the screen. And the blue line work encompasses all the work effort that's associated with the Draw 1 program. So it extends from North Station, across the river, out along through the Tower A interlocking, past the BET and what's known as the MBTA T-pad property, and stops just short of Sullivan Square Station. And there's also a branch that extends out along the Fitchburg line that wraps around the back of the BET as well. So the blue line work represents the boundaries of the work to be done for the program, and the design of that program now sits at approximately the 75% level of completion. Shown here is the same view and the same boundaries, but they're colored into three segments. Firstly, there's the North Station work shown in red, and then the work associated with the bridge shown in blue in and around the river and encompasses the Tower A building. And then the green line work is all the track and signal improvements extending north of the site. This breakout of work also coincides with the latest permitting strategy that the project has. When the project was initiated, it was intended to be a design bid build project, and everything was to be permitted as a single project accordingly. The current strategy is displayed here, whereby for the permitting purposes, we've broken it into three pieces: the red, the blue, and the green. Red and green, North Station and the track work, represents a simpler permitting path. It involves a categorical exclusion being submitted for the NEPA process, whereas the work around the bridge, shown in blue, that needs a full environmental assessment. So it just sort of naturally breaks out into that, and this represents the permitting strategy currently in place.
One thing to add to that strategy is one of the items that we were able to not only show but include in that strategy was that those areas around North Station and the areas of the track and signal work as having independent utility and benefit to the MBTA, whether or not the bridge was done today or tomorrow or the next week, those elements of the work would be beneficial and useful to the MBTA in our current operation. So that is one of the drivers and the understandings in being able to break those out on a permitting piece, but also maybe on a potential construction piece. It allows for thinking of this thing in smaller projects instead of one large design bid build gigantic project. Still has the same components, still has the same kind of price tag, but also would allow us to kind of think about it in a different light in terms of how we would contract that. So that was one of the things that came about in the development of the NEPA discussion and documentation with our federal partners, is that if we could look at this from those vantage points, there's areas of the work that we could attempt to be ready to initiate earlier. So I just want to add that to the discussion. So, thanks, Mark.
Drilling down into the elements of the work, starting with the bridge. Essentially, there's two movable spans at present that span the navigation channel, and this project involves the replacement of those two movable spans and the 4 tracks they carry with 3 movable spans and the ability of 6 tracks to cross the navigation channel. This is the plan view that Carl had up a little earlier. In this orientation, North Station is to the left of the screen, off camera, so to speak, but you can see the ends of the platforms on the left-hand side. And the bridge kind of breaks into 3 components. There's the south approach trestle, there's the movable spans themselves, and there's the north trestle. As Carl stated, the south trestle had a fire back in the 80s, and the timber superstructure was replaced with precast concrete deck panels, but they are still supported on the original timber piles, and that's a fundamental problem for us. The movable spans are 2 Scherzer rolling lifts. There used to be actually 4 movable spans at the site, and the caissons that supported the other 2 that have since been demolished can be seen on the upstream side of the river. Once you cross the movable spans, the original north trestle structure is still in place, and that has got a timber superstructure and also supported on timber piles. This is the same view, but with our proposed bridge layout superimposed on the existing. And the shape of the existing is highlighted through the purple shading. So as you can see, we have a wider structure and we have the 3 movable spans now across the navigation channel. So the plan is to reconstruct in its entirety the south trestle and also the north trestle, and to widen those structures to accommodate the 3 movable spans. Drilling into the movable spans themselves, here is a plan view of those 3 spans. The additional span, so to speak, the first of the spans, is going to be built on the upstream side of the 2 existing structures. And then the other 2 spans to be installed will be installed within the footprint of the existing Scherzer rolling lifts. And that is actually quite a significant constraint. If we look back at some of the earlier imagery shown, where in our rendered views it's clear that we have selected a vertical lift type structure for the site. And it's a particular type of vertical lift at that. It's what's often referred to as a Louisiana-style vertical lift, whereby the towers are connected by steel framing up at the highest elevation of the towers. Conventional vertical lifts often have the towers independent. And one of the big advantages of that structure type is it has a very small footprint, which works well at this site. For example, if we were to take the existing Scherzers and to replicate those at this site, we would have to widen the decks to meet current MBTA safety standards for clearances. And as a consequence, those structures would not fit in the available footprint if we were to pursue that approach. So the Louisiana-style vertical lifts work well for us in that regard. Another advantage of those structures is all the electrical and mechanical equipment can be placed up on the top of the framing and away from the area which is so congested at the deck level. And by having that mechanical electrical system raised well up above the flood elevation, we avoid any issues associated with flooding in the area. We are unable to raise the track elevation to get out of extreme flood elevations, but that's just a fact of life given the infrastructure surrounding us where North Station is. But with the mechanical electrical system set at that higher elevation, should there be an extreme flooding event, once the waters recede, we would expect that these bridges would be operable very shortly thereafter. This is the layout of the mechanical system of the 3 bridges up at that top framing elevation. And it's a pretty straightforward mechanical system. We have a single motor centered on the top of the framing inside a machine house. And that one motor drives all 4 sheaves for each bridge. So it's a very simple, reliable system. We've built in a lot of redundancy. There's going to be a lot of openings of this bridge. They average over 3,000 openings a year. So we're looking to provide the MBTA a simple, reliable system with built-in redundancy. So this is, and the other advantage with the one motor driving all 4 sheaves is it essentially eliminates a problem common to vertical lift structures where there's differential slippage between each end of the span. This is a rendered view of the proposed bridge structure. Now, the rendered view you see here represents the aesthetic treatments that have been developed through our interactions with Miguel Rosales, the bridge architect on the team. And so there are some older imagery of the proposed vertical lift structure, which looks a little different, but what you see here is the most recent version. Now, the mechanical system, the structural system is essentially unchanged, but the appearance is certainly a little sleeker. So the current view, as defined by that arched shaped fin at the top, is what we are now moving forward with. This is a rendered view taken looking from the Nashua Street Park on the south bank of the river. Now looking from the north bank at the bridge, and in this case we showed the bridge in the open position, and it's worth mentioning that the vertical clearance provided by the bridge, the horizontal clearances for the navigation channel have all been approved with the US Coast Guard. And they've also been approved with DCR. And that's important because DCR have jurisdiction over the waterway here as it relates to navigation in addition to the Coast Guard. And another feature that's to be fully replaced, as Carl mentioned, is the Tower A building, which is shown in the upper right photograph. The Tower A building, as with the two bridges that are in place out there, are eligible for historic registration. So any work that we do here has to be vetted with the Section 106 parties. We have come to an agreement that the building needs to be fully replaced, that it's beyond salvage, as is the case for the two Scherzer rolling lifts. Down in the lower view is a rendered view of what the new Tower A building may look like. This is a plan view of Tower A. The original Tower A, so to speak, is indicated here in pink in the middle of the screen. And as Carl alluded to, there's a lot of vital electrical equipment in that building. Because of the condition of the building, the operations of the bridge has been moved to a temporary control house, which is shown by that orange square to the left. The original proposal for the new location of Tower A was to be offset from the existing so that the electrical equipment in Tower A could be left in place and in operation until the new building is built and the electrical equipment swapped over. However, this will require a temporary relocation of that temporary control house. But the location shown, we do believe, provides the best views of the river in both directions. Another item to mention here on this screen is there's a yellow band to the right of Tower A, and that represents the North Bank Bridge, and that's an existing bridge, pedestrian bridge structure in place, but it has, it presents a conflict for our project. Shown here in plan view, the yellow band represents the layout of that North Bank Bridge, and it provides connectivity between the North Point Park on the upstream side of the bridge to the Paul Revere Park on the downstream side of the bridge. Again, it's DCR-owned bridge, and it's a significant architectural structure for sure. However, the problem we have with the bridge can be seen, if you can see, in the upper right photograph here. The main span of that North Bank Bridge spans over the railroad tracks coming off the Draw 1 spans. And with our new track alignment, Pier 3, I'll point it out here, is in conflict with our proposed tracks. After much study, we have come up with a concept and actually advanced through to 75% complete, a plan to address that conflict. And we have broad agreement with the DCR on this approach. And if you look at the lower part of the screen, for a moment, I'll turn myself around. This is the offending pier here, the red pier to the left-hand side of the screen. That's Pier 3. And the existing Pier 4 is the other red pier on the other side of the tracks. And the plan is to construct new piers 20 feet offset, and they're represented by the green shaded structures. So 20-foot offset to the upstream side of the existing piers. And in that way, the existing piers 3 and 4, shown in red, can be removed. Now, one consequence of the shift is that the span between Pier 4 and Pier 5 gets longer, and to address that structural concern, an additional pier will be added between those two piers, and that's shown in blue. So in this method, we can remove the existing Pier 3 that's in the way, and our track alignment works. However, we have an additional challenge with the bridge in that it does not provide adequate vertical clearance throughout the width of the rail corridor. So a separate step will be required to raise this bridge approximately 12 inches. So the bridge is about 700 foot long over 7 spans, and it's continuous to those spans. So the plan is to raise the entirety of the structure approximately 12 inches, and then to reconfigure and reconstruct the supports to that higher elevation, and then rework the grading at the touchdown points. Relative to the track work, we show 2 track schematics, and just to point out, these schematics are shown in a simplified view. They're certainly not to scale, but they help represent the level of work that's to be done at the site. The top view shown in the black line work represents existing conditions, and if you look to the very left of the screen, you might be able to pick out the platforms A through E. Excuse me, wrong button. Oh, I went way off. Okay. Try that again. So yes, platforms A through E to the left are the platforms at North Station, servicing 10 railroad tracks. Those 10 tracks, as they come out of the station, truncate down to 4 tracks across the river. And those movable spans are represented by those parallelograms. And then the tracks open up to 7 tracks through the Tower A interlocking before the various branches break off for the commuter rail system. What we're proposing is to upgrade at North Station to 12 station tracks. So it involves the construction of a new platform F. And then the tracks coming out will come across 3 movable spans with 6 tracks across the river, and then open up to 8 tracks in the Tower A interlocking. And as you might be able to pick out, there's a significant increase in the number of switches in what is being proposed versus the existing condition. And I think there's some 70+ switches that are involved here in the finalized condition as shown. And those switches will be typically number 10s or greater, and this will reduce the wear on the tracks. It will allow greater speeds through the switch areas. And it also, there will be geometric improvements that will further allow for faster speeds. So the trains coming down the lines through this area will be able to move more rapidly, which will reduce travel times for the public. And also, what's achieved here is better flexibility. With the new system, trains from any branch of the MBTA line coming in through the Tower A interlocking can now go to any platform in North Station and vice versa. And also, all trains from any platform leaving North Station can all now access the BET. To support the extensive track work, an equally large signals effort is required. There's already a contract in place which is close to completion now, which is upgrading the signal system in and around the North Station area, converting from analog to digital, and that will be a vital building block for the work that we're proposing here as part of the Draw 1 project. The work extends through 7 zones out to the sand interlocking. Looking at the North Station, as we have said, we will be installing a new platform F. In reality, some of that platform is currently in place already. Within the footprint of the North Station building, they did build a stub length of platform F. So this is, a little fast with the trigger. This is a plan representation of North Station. That thick red line represents the face of the North Station on the track side. And to the left of that, marked in blue, you might be able to see the existing platform F, which is, as shown in that photograph, currently in place. This project will extend that platform out some 340 feet and allow for commuter trains to use this platform, which will account for tracks 11 and 12, which is part of the project. It's worth noting that where platform F is shown extending out from the building. That space is currently being used by MGH as parking space. But the land is actually owned by the MBTA. So once this project gets underway in construction, the MBTA will be able to reclaim that land for the construction of Platform F. And one other thing to note, that there is a support from the overhead levered circle connector that comes down through the platform, and the platform will have to be built around that. Other upgrades at North Station include life safety, electrical, and drainage, but the platform here is the major part of the work.
So now that you've seen a little bit of the scope involved with this program, I want to talk about some of the challenges that we're dealing with and how we intend to overcome or meet those challenges. So a big driver and really our goal is to maintain operations throughout construction. And we're dealing with one of the busiest terminal stations in the Northeast. So the scope or the requirements that the design has been presented with is to maintain a minimum of 4 active tracks across the river throughout construction. Whether it's on an existing bridge or a proposed bridge, we still need to maintain and use 4 active tracks at a minimum. We have to have a minimum of 8 of the existing 10 station tracks available to operations throughout the week. Not necessarily which 8, but those 8 has been the minimum, and we've shown through operation studies that that's our kind of peak demand throughout the day. So we are looking at keeping that amount of the station open at all times. We're looking to minimize the navigation channel closures that are required for construction operations to something that is defined and minimized, and that can be broadcast to the mariners, and our partners at the Coast Guard have been engaged with the NEPA process. We've also submitted a bridge permit for the work, but the navigational operations is something that we cannot just decide that we're not going to provide. So there are some construction operations that we know will be barge driven, and when we go to remove or install some of the actual movable span equipment, there will be some channel closures, but they will have to be set to be occurring in a non-peak time. Most of the river traffic in this stretch of the Charles is pleasure boating. There are some commercial operations, but for the predominant traffic, it's recreational. So it's kind of seasonally driven from May through October. And once you get out of those windows, or out of that window, the navigational use kind of drops off, as do our openings required for passages of marine vessels. So we have certain times that we'll be able to allow work to happen, and that's been defined and discussed in our permitting documentation. Talk about construction staging. Mark mentioned the overall scheme of building a new bridge to the, call it the upstream or western side of the existing bridges. That's sort of the easy piece of this puzzle, because it's building something new where there isn't anything. You're next to tracks, but you're not over the tracks, and you're not altering the existing bridges until you get into the approach work. But for the main span themselves, that's a pretty straightforward piece. But what happens when we get into later stages of the work is that you're trying to deconstruct and then reconstruct structures in what would be the center portion of the plant, or of the 3, and then ultimately the downstream. A little bit easier coming at it from the outside, but still a challenge, because you want to maintain those 4 river tracks at all times throughout construction. So that is really the biggest challenge that we found, is just how to build this project and keep utilizing North Station for its current operation, and not alter and negatively impact the ridership and the operational capacity that we have. So, there are some temporary work areas that we've identified and potential staging areas. Mark had mentioned and shown a picture of the T-pad. We're still working on finalizing that piece of it and how much of that we can use, but that's has rail and road access to the site, so that's one advantageous piece of the puzzle. There's some abutting properties. Mark showed the proximity of the MGH facility. You can kind of see it here. It sticks right out in. Almost we have to go around it to get to the station in its current condition. So that's a definite constraint and challenge that we have to not only do our work, but make sure that we don't negatively impact our neighbors and their day-to-day operations. I have a small video we're going to play, and while it gets queued up, this is an output from our track and signal designer, HNTB. They have a railroad operations modeling group, and they have this software that has been utilized as part of our operational studies. And I'm just going to let it play in the background. We'll talk through it a little bit, but essentially what you're seeing here is movements of vehicles in or out of North Station. This is kind of the final condition with the 3 bridges in place. You can kind of make them out right about there. And then you can see the platforms are labeled right to left, A through F. So our platform F is now kind of part of the final puzzle. And while this shows the movements coming in or out of the final condition, we've done a similar study and a similar amount of work for each of the stages and operational changes that are required to implement the bridge construction and or some of the significant signal and track work north of the plant. So these studies have been not only a pre and post, but also a during. And those numbers have been shown to validate and provide our operational performance throughout construction. So great deal of work has gone into that in the past and making our partners in operations aware of how we're seeing this thing get built and implemented. So I would just want to kind of give a glimpse of that. I can't pretend to give you what all the different colors mean, but they are representative of an important piece of the operation in terms of the train movements. But you can kind of just see how the dispatcher will be able to have that many more switches and crossovers and movements to get through. There's an existing ladder out there today, and when we go out to the site and you look northbound from the North Bank pedestrian bridge, you can make out the movements. But once you get past any of those networks, there's not a lot of options, so you're kind of dedicated to a particular track. This new layout is actually a double set of ladders, so we're almost giving them that many more options, and the network will just be that much more robust and resilient to get trains in and out of North Station. So I think that's enough of the hour diagram, but that's just something we wanted to highlight as part of the design and requirements for construction, is that operations is key to this program. So, Mark had mentioned in more of a detailed view, the 3 bridges getting built. Here's a little bit more of a staging diagram. You can kind of see off to the upper left is the extension of platform F, shown in yellow. That's work that could be early action, and that's why it's identified as stage 1. Then you get to the south approach, and the new 3rd vertical lift span is the upper or western upstream side, and the north trestle going up. You can also see the North Bank pedestrian bridge and that offending pier. Those are the 2 newly constructed location piers, as well as the backspan. We're calling it Pier 4A. But that's the work that's entailed with that, and that is could be and will be early action work in the project. You can also see the final disposition of the new Tower A, as well as we've highlighted, it's all in yellow, the existing Tower A, just for the relationship of where things are in when we go out there later today. And within the right in the footprint of the new building is the existing control hut. I don't want to call it a full tower because it's a one-man shop, and it's not a lot of space, but there's a lot going on in that small space. It's manned 24/7 because we do have to maintain navigational access to the waterway 24/7. So we do have a person that is bridge tender. We have 3 shifts, and that runs around the clock. So that is something that we are hoping to make their lives a little bit better in the final condition as well, both in visibility and just the accommodations that they have to do their job on a daily basis. And then, as you can see, the purple section in the center is flanked on the south approach with a light blue and a green. Those are kind of the approach subsections that would be required to be removed and rebuilt as part of the Stage 2 bridge. And after that is all completely completed and in operation, we'll be able to remove the existing eastern or downstream bridge and replace the eastern portion of both the south approach or trestle and the northern trestle and the third bridge. So Mark had mentioned that some of the original caissons from the third and fourth original Scherzer bridges are actually still in the river today. When you go out there, you'll be able to see what those are. One of our environmental commitments is to remove all of that material and those structures down to at or just below the mud line. So there's quite a bit of demolition work and rework of the channel. You are seeing the existing fender system kind of highlighted in or grayscale that extends further west or upstream. But the new fender layout is kind of superimposed on top of what's out there today. So just to give everybody a representation of the construction limits within the channel itself. There is a little bit of dredge work anticipated on the southwest corner, and some of that just has to deal with silt buildup that has occurred at the upstream fender and behind the fender. So that is our construction stages and challenges. You can imagine running 11 million people through this site in a year's time while you're doing this work, or 100 a day or 500 trains a week. It just, the numbers start to add up very quickly on a lot of aspects of this work, including the price tag. So let's look at the challenges of looking at those stages in a construction standpoint. We've identified that the stage 1 with early action is about 2.5 years. That would allow for the procurement of both, not only the first, but all 3 bridges. They are triplets. There's a little bit of difference with the stairways on the outer portions, but for the, as Mark mentioned, we've built in uniformity and operational similarities. So all 3 bridges could be procured at the same time, but it's still a long lead fabrication item. We also think that all of the track work and specialty signal work associated with the ladders and the crossovers would be part of the early procurement, but that's a long lead time as well. So we see that first stage as being 2.5 years. Once that's completed, and it's another 2.5 years to not only remove, but to install or construct the the middle of the 3 bridges. Some intricate demolition work that's going to be required. We have a concept, but we're going to allow the contractor to come up with methodologies and things that would, but we do have a scenario to present with the use of heavy equipment SPMTs to lower and remove the counterweight and take it up off the site to the north. One of the reasons with the, I don't know if I can get back to it quickly, I probably can get something close. But if you see the space that we have to work with, really not a lot. But one of the thoughts about leaving the, where the existing Tower A building is it would allow a place to get the counterweights off of the right-of-way and be able to process them, not in the weekend or in the short period of outage it would require to get those massive blocks of concrete off the right-of-way. So that is one of the challenges, and also the items that we've identified is that if we can make a little bit more room in a tight space, that would give the contractor a place to process and remove the counterweights to get them out off the site in their during construction. And then in the final stage 3 for the 3rd bridge, we're seeing that being in about 2 years. So, all in, we're at that 7 years of construction. There's probably some ways that could be thought to change that, but in terms of our design and the way we've papered it to date, that's kind of the number that we've been able to use for cost and also for presentation in the materials for the NEPA documentation. So let's talk about the track and signal stages. We've aligned certain things to operate with the bridge staging, because in order to get trains to the 3rd bridge, there's certain items that we have to do in a certain order. But you can kind of see we have almost 14 track and signal phases or sub-phases within the stage 1. And that just gets us to the one new bridge. There's 24 elements of specialty track work installed during that stage. And as Mark showed on the track signaling diagram, we're touching 7 different zones. So that's just stage 1, and then it almost doubles for stage 2. These are not these are cumulative numbers, mind you. So and in stage 3 a little bit less, but as I said, when you start to do the math, there's a lot of intricate and numbers going at us in a lot of directions, but just the number of stages alone and sub-stages and phases for the track and signal components to fit within the bridge work is almost staggering. The plan set, as it was developed for 75%, is something that is more than an afternoon's pleasure reading. It's just a lot of material that's been put forth for this project already. So with a constrained site and a marine site, we've looked at and we've included in our permitting ways to access and deliver materials to the site, also for construction equipment that will actually be involved in building the work. But here you can see highlighted in that light blue is a series of temporary trestles that would be work platforms for equipment and also material storage. You can also see with these gray blocks, those are barges where they could bring materials and be offloaded in the overnight, or to be available to the contractor on site. But each one of those has a unique fit up, and we're working directly beneath the Zachem Bridge or the Leverett Connector in some fashion. There's piers in the water. You can make out how the shape changes here. That's basically because there's a substructure unit for the highway bridge directly below that we have to kind of go around and fit around. So just a lot of thought has gone into being able to give as much space and as much access to the contractor as possible. But as you can see, there's not a lot of place to put it. So you can also make out that we've included the space for the third bridge within that trestle structure between the existing bridges and the western or upstream direction. And that is to allow that work to happen offline and be available to the contractor from jump. We have some renderings of that coming forward in the presentation, but that's really the challenge of this project, I think, is how to build what we're going to build in the space we have to build it, and keep trains moving throughout. To that end, we've worked with some construction engineering professionals that have been brought onto the team. Genesis Structures has been part of the analysis and thought process going into the constructability of this project. We've developed and are working through getting project-specific Railroad Directorate parameters that would allow for special construction rules at this site. If you've worked for the MBTA, you know that one of the challenges is to operate equipment adjacent to or over top of our trains or tracks that are supporting our trains. A lot of times the site is, you can only work in the off hours, or you can only work when there's a diversion of rail traffic. We're not going to be able to divert all of North Station. And for certain pieces of the work, we're going to have an understanding and a safe way to build it, but we're going to have a way that operations can continually get through the site. So here you can see a rendering. Those aren't actually trains, but train envelopes, just to show that we could have active tracks either on new structure or existing, and we're trying to do work in that middle zone, whether it be flying in piles or flying in portions of the new superstructure for the approach trestles. So that is just a way, and we won't get into all the details here, but that is something that we have worked hard to identify and present to our operating partners. These plans, I think we number about 25 right now. The intent would be to publish that with bid documents as signed and approved construction rules that would allow for the contracting community to better look at this job and understand what their working parameters and timelines and constraints are. As I mentioned, piles could get into the equation, and the thought being that if that left track was active, once the pile is on the hook, we'd have to only be able to fly it over in between trains that are communicated with our dispatching team and the employee in charge on site. But once it was flown over and put into a template in the center there, it could remain on the hook and a train could pass by. We wouldn't be actually doing any movement, but there's a way to build this without totally taking that track out of service for an extended period of time. So it's going to take longer, but it's going to be doable, and it's also going to be safe for all components. So again, those are something that we've worked hard and coordinated with a lot of folks to understand the construction activity and also the operational constraints. Again, here's another picture with same crane operations and the like, or equipment on temporary works, but really the challenge is to identify and set limits on the crane booms and things to stay out of the clearance envelope of the train, so that if you had a load on a hook or you had a crane boom in position and work stopped, you could temporarily let a train go through without impacting that clearance envelope in all directions, in all tracks. So again, this is something that has been well-developed and something that we would look to share with the contractors community before or during the bid phase. And another challenge, we makes a little more sense now, but if you take away all the labels and you just look at the location of our drawbridges with respect to existing infrastructure or property owners that are have their own operations in mind on a day-to-day basis, you can quickly see the constraints that we're dealing with and the challenges. But I'm hoping that this view kind of lets everybody see the highway network that's going around and through our site in several layers. The Leverett connector does do a big run around and comes back. So if you're coming across the Tobin and you want to get into Boston, you got to go underneath the Zachem and around the ramp structure and then come southbound into the city. And there is a direct exit onto Nashua Street just to the west of our site. So it is a challenge to kind of deal with overhead vehicles. One of the, this corner of the south trestle is actually directly underneath that, and we have some differing substructure elements in mind for that. Introduction of some micropiles in that one corner for the portions of the substructure. So we have accounted for and planned for those items, but it's still just a challenge that we wanted to highlight to everyone, is that there is a significant amount of day-to-day operations on a number of fronts outside of our railroad to consider as we look to not impact the general public through our construction work. So, and now we're going to get into our third video. We have as Mark mentioned, we have RDV has helped us develop a rendered model space for the project. This includes not only proposed work, but it also looks at some of the existing features. So we're just going to take a little ride through. This is existing bridge. Those are the existing caissons for bridges 3 and 4, which no longer exist, but we'll be removing. Here we're looking at some rendered view of equipment and those temporary trestles. There's the framing for the first phase work. This is during, and here's the completed work. As Mark mentioned, some of the rendering framing up on top it's the same framing. Some of the architectural features a little bit different, but that's the entirety of the 3 bridges in place. This is all done through a BIM model, so it's all spatially relevant and correct, and it allows the model to be viewed from many different angles, and it stays in proportion. It also allows us to develop videos and flyovers. Here's coming in from the north. There's our 3 bridges, the new tower, and we're coming into North Station. You can kind of see the new stub platform F there, and I'm told that this hashtag even brings us right to the MBTA website for North Station Draw 1. So as I was showing it to somebody, I got the comment, sick. I don't know if that means a lot to some of the people in the room, but for the younger generation, it's pretty cool. And that model and that space will be available to the public when we release it. It'll be something you can look at on your phone, and you can drill into different parts of the project. It'll be a great teaching tool and talking tool. So my thanks to the team for highlighting the need to and the desire to make that available. It's been helpful in showing people, and even in this group, the complexities of the work, but also just the new technology that's behind some of the design that we've developed to date. Our plan is to keep that active and have a website access to the public and the partnerships that we developed for the work. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about funding. Obviously, with a $1.2 billion price tag, funding is always something that people want to know about and hear about, see what is going on there. But we are fully funded at that level. $1.2 billion was authorized in last year's CIP, and you can see that online. Since that time, that was the fiscal year 24 to 28 CIP, was at our final $1.2 billion number. We applied for and where we were awarded a US DOT MPDG, which is Multimodal Programmatic Discretionary Grant. I get my acronyms. One thing I'm learning around working for the authority is acronyms are everybody's friends or their worst enemy. But that was something that was we were made aware of in September of this year. That kind of replaces part of that $1.2 billion from a federal participation level. It allows us to have money in the coffers right up front for construction. So it's been a great awareness and a great participation at the federal program. I'll note that this was the third cycle of applications that we went through for that same grant. So you can kind of see the progress as the design is developed and the understanding of the complexity and also the construction and effort that's going to take to build this bridge. The more we could get out there to our federal partners and get an understanding, there is an appreciation and understanding at that level of what it's going to take to build this, and they've kicked in big time as far as the funding goes. So I'm appreciative of that effort. We have a grants team at the authority that has been working with us along the way to put these applications together and seek federal participation. So there may be some more to come. I understand that federal participation could be locked as much as 80% of the total cost, but right now we've identified that 472 as an active grant, and we're in the process of obligating those funds as we speak, but we're going to continue to seek their participation as we move forward. I'm going to give things back to Mark. He's going to talk a little bit about the NEPA review process and status.
The good news is we're close to the finish line here. Yes, we are going through the environmental process at present. Certainly the critical path for the project is the environmental assessment associated with the bridge work. We are making good progress there. We have just submitted a draft for the FTA to review, and that review is currently ongoing. A critical, oh, jumping around on me again. A critical part of the NEPA process is the Section 106. As we mentioned, the original structure developed as shown in the RDV model was a little more engineering driven rather without an architectural touch, and through the efforts of Miguel Rosales we have adjusted the appearance of the bridge, and as we have shown today, the structure in the earlier renderings has been reviewed and accepted by the Section 106 parties and is going to be written into a memorandum of understanding, which is just about complete. There's been extensive outreach performed to date. Carl was showing some of the critical abutting stakeholders, DCR, Boston Sand and Gravel, MGH, MassDOT, and so forth. And those outreach efforts are ongoing. And there was a public meeting held back in June of this year, and we expect at least one more public meeting coming up, probably in the range of January of 2025. That's being coordinated at present with the FTA folk. So that pretty much wraps up the information we had intended to present today. We're certainly interested to hear feedback and questions, but first, just to make a brief mention of the proposed site tour for this afternoon. For people, I'm sure a lot of people are, but for people who may not be familiar with the city here, the North Station is not that far from where we are. It's accessible either by walking. I think the Google Maps shows it to be about a 25-minute walk. Or you can take the Orange Line, and if you leave this building out onto Stewart Street and take a left in a block and a half, you hit Washington Street, and the Orange Line runs down Washington Street. So if you take a left to Chinatown or right to Tufts, you'll be able to get an Orange Line train that will bring you directly to North Station. And Marty, we have a handout with this information.
Yes, I'll have someone at the door on the way out to give you a handout with a map that will show you all of the locations where you can best see the bridge.
Thank you, Marty. Once you get to North Station, we ask you check in at the Fairgate location. Amelia Cruteau, if you Amelia from the MBTA project manager working with Carl will be there to greet people and to register everybody's arrival. Aluchi Aniachuku from STV will be there as well. So if you look out for those individuals, we'll be wearing yellow vests. That will be another way of recognizing these folk. And they'll be right at the Fairgate, and they'll have the ability to get you through the Fairgate as you may need. We have 3 locations where we'll have designated presenters on standby, and they're shown here on this view by the 3 stars. We got the red star over at the North Bank Bridge, the yellow star on the south bank of the Charles, and the green star, which is on platform E within the station. And we have various presenters. Sam, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to join us today. We hope Sam and Carl Ekstrom from the MBTA, Nick Altabrando from our National Bridge Practice, Bill Goulet, the project engineer, and Heather Moulton, the deputy project manager, will be among those stationed, and we'll all be wearing bright yellow jackets or vests for identification. And our thought is not to have everybody go around in a group, but as you arrive, you can check in with Amelia and Lucci and then continue to any of these locations. We're trying to avoid a large group of people at the one location at the one time because there's so much background noise at these locations. It's very hard to hear, so we're hoping to have smaller groups coming throughout the 2-hour window, and then the interactions can be more personal and informal and interactive.
One thing we have to note is at North Station, if you got here and came through South Station, South Station does not currently have fare gates to come in and out from the platforms. But at North Station, there is a dedicated system in place that you can only enter the platform area through a fare collection gate. We have a number of passes that are available. Amelia will have those over at North Station. That'll allow you to tap through and walk out onto platform E, get my nomenclature, or platform 5. And we can, it's all, from our vantage point, this is all public space. Passengers use it daily. So we're not requiring PPE for any of the attendees. Mark mentioned we'll have vests on just for visibility and for identification purposes, but as far as anyone that wants to join us this afternoon, we're not asking or requiring vests and hard hats and the like. This is not active construction. This is public space, public parks. There's a little bit of walking. If you want to get to the North Bank, you do have to walk around the front side of Causeway Street and down around and actually walk across the new Charles River Dam structure to get across the river and then come in from Paul Revere Park. But it's a great vantage point. You can stand directly above the tracks. You're maybe 50 feet from the backside of the two counterweights, and you can see the trains coming in and out. You can turn and see the network of tracks and signals that are part of the work to the railroad north. So encourage and invite everyone to come along. And as Mark said, we'll just try and keep the groups freely moving, and you can go in any of those directions at any time. So I think that's our presentation for this afternoon. I know there's probably some questions. We do have some time for that. Get my clock. There it is. Yep.
Just to check, raise a hand. How many people plan to have a site tour?
Okay. So our plan is to be available for that 2-hour block, but if the numbers and things appear that, that's why we're asking you to just check in with Amelia so we have a count. But we will stay stationed as long as necessary, but if it turns out that we get people through in an hour, then it'll only be an hour tour. But it'll be available to those that want to come. So by way of question and answer, before we get started, Marty, are there some online?
None at this time.
Okay, all right, well, that makes that easy. We do have microphones in the room. If anybody wants to ask a question, we can bring one to you, and you can just make sure that the whole group can hear the question, and we'll try and answer as best we can. And if we can't, we'll put together answers and get them out to the entirety of the forum. But
Carl, one basic question just came in. When do you hope to begin construction on the project?
an exact timeline has not been identified. We do have the NEPA documentation and process to get through. We have a target and a deadline for the environmental assessment is March of 2025. So once we get through that point, we're able to utilize and start obligating some of those construction dollars that were part of the federal grant. So that's one constraint that we have. The other piece is decisions that need to be made is what construction are we doing and when are we doing it? So we have to look at some of the packaging and the some of the enabling work and also the main work itself. How is it best to present that to the construction community for consideration of bidding and the like? So I don't have an exact date, but we're looking at, it could be as early as mid to late 25 for portions of the work on an enabling basis, and then probably 26 would be the real target for heavy construction. Anyone in the room have a question for the team? One over here.
Hi, Christine Gorman with Parsons. Based on the 3 stages that you showed, any ballpark on a cost estimate as to the way you broke those down that you can share?
I don't have an exact number per stage. Our construction estimate at the time when those was developed, I think we were just under $875 million for all of the work. So I don't think it's a straight up split into thirds, but it's probably north of 150 per bridge.
I want to clarify, a lot of the cost is actually track and signal work. Action, I call it early action projects. It's not just a bridge project. Breakdown of that, Sam, is it like 60/40 or that around numbers? Between track and system construction.
Mark, they can't hear you.
Yeah. I want to say we're about 120 to 125 for the track and signal north of the facility. There's some that is going to have to be part of the actual bridge work the closer in you get. But I think we've targeted at 125 to, and then for the North Station platform, we're kind of in the, is it 40? Around 40 million. And then the rest would be into the bridges. So 875, 125, 40. It's still a pretty significant piece is the bridge and structures work. Got one over here.
I'm pretty loud. I know you haven't figured out the procurement process yet, but have you figured out how many projects you'll be procuring? Is it a single project?
That is an item that we hope to get some input and feedback on this with our discussions ongoing. I know the general manager and Sam have given us some focus and given us some time. They want to hear from industry. They want to kind of weigh that in on some of the decisions that need to be made. So I don't have an exact answer on that, but there are some folks in the room that thought one big contract would be best. There's others that think that a series of contracts, whether it's with the same or not, that's where it becomes a challenge to operate multiple things at the same time or interfaced. So there are some challenges on that side of the house as well. So we're working through that. We hope to have some decisions made in the coming months and be able to start that procurement process early next year. Two over here on this side.
So no procurement methods have been determined for any of the three or one package, and you'll determine that in a couple months?
Correct.
So
the basis of the design when it was initiated and when it brought us to the point of the current 75% was the assumption was that it was going to be a design bid build. And when we proofed that out and papered it, we've actually had that design in hand since January of 23, just to kind of put context on. And that's when some of the cost growth and the understanding of the operational impact of the work was going to affect the construction estimates, both time and money. That was when we really had to take a step back and look at how we were going to build this and how we were going to pay for this. So in that time from January of 23 till now, we've advanced the permitting requirements that are needed to obligate federal dollars and participate from that perspective. But we have not advanced the design into any one particular package or packages because of the decisions that need to be made with our leadership team. So we're working on that, but we don't have a solid answer.
So the procurement method, everything's kind of on hold until you pick the procurement method, basically, as far as the design goes.
That is correct. Sam Zoe here. Just want to respond. For a typical design build project, we usually stop at 30 and start the procurement, right? This is definitely unusual. But I'll say this. There are a lot of expertise and experience in this room. We like to hear from you. Before we set on just on design bid build. Obviously, there a lot of work has done, a lot of design work has been done. I don't mind we step back a little bit just to hear, is there any other ideas, creative ideas to build this or even stage it?
Just on that point, Sam, this is a lot to absorb, and thank you for all the information. But I guess just as a follow-up, you know, sometimes we can be a little shy in big rooms, especially on a Monday morning. But is there going to be some sort of portal or like a deadline to give you guys the feedback So just so everyone knows, because, you know, there will be a lot of follow-up, but
Sure.
how do we get that to you through a specific email or website portal, and are you going to put a deadline on that?
We do have a forum website, forum email address. You probably saw that, d1industryforum@mbta.com. That would probably be the first place I would start with contacting the team and providing any after effect. As far as a deadline, I would say probably it would be best by a week from now, maybe 2 weeks max, so that we don't get too far down any further discussions internally with the information that we've heard this week. We do have 2 full days of one-on-one meetings for tomorrow and Wednesday. So we do anticipate getting a lot of input through those avenues, but for folks that maybe aren't involved or have further questions and things, the Industry Forum website, our email address, will be monitored, and would be a great place to start. We can set up a SharePoint if somebody wanted to provide a little bit larger documentation or materials to us or from us. We don't have anything in store right to give you today, but the video from today's presentation and the presentation itself will be put up on the Draw One Bridge project for the general public and for this group as well. So that will be available via the MBTA website and the project website as soon as we can kind of get it transferred and transcribed electronically.
Mike Shama with TY Lin. Just a question about what are your thoughts about construction management? How are you doing that?
Obviously, this is an MBTA project. We intend to have MBTA led management. We are looking for, and we had a position on the for a program manager to be the call it the executive level position for the program, and we will build a team around that individual. And Sam, you want to?
Sure. So the thought is we certainly gonna very soon name a project director for this program director. Then under that, we are going to have a core MBTA employee team supplemented with obviously PMCM. And that's a typical way of how we handle mega projects or programs. So I am pretty confident there will be a PMCM in procurement coming out for this program.
Timing of that, Sam, the procurement contract. What's the timing for that?
The timing, the question is, what's the timing for the PMCM? It will be in 2025, for sure.
Hi, in preparations for some future discussions, part of the agenda topics were delivery methods and contracting vehicles. I think I understand the delivery methods, design build, CMAR, progressive design build. Contracting vehicles, is that possibly incorporating risk, sharing cost, various ways of pricing the project? Is that what you're asking for in contracting vehicles? The definition of contracting vehicles, I guess.
To start it off is looking at the complexity and the volume of work that we have. The contracting approach obviously is going to weigh into how we bring someone on board to do this work. But there's also, is it one big project? Is it multiple contracting vehicles? I think that was more along my lines of understanding, is that it could be a series of contracts, or it could be, and we're trying to, get feedback from industry on, sort of the pros and cons of each of those as we develop a strategy.
Yeah, I think you're asking the question because we have something posted on the website in terms of procurement method and contracting vehicles. I would say, in general, it's interchangeable. The real question we need to answer is how many contracts we are going to put out and what kind of a procurement method we are going to put out for each contract, right? This is why we have this forum, and your input is appreciated.
Just as a follow-up to that, everybody's been talking a lot about progressive design build. Is there anything like that that's off the table that's legislatively precluded?
That's a great question. In terms of, just in general, progressive design build, Massachusetts, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, at this moment does not allow progressive design build. There are a lot of interest to pursue that. As a matter of fact, Mass DOT and MBTA both are interested in pursuing progressive design build, regardless of this project in general, okay? And I think we have great support from both ACEC and SIM to advance that. This is in the, I would call it the preliminary stage of legislative proposal. And I can tell you that we are going to propose that. Whether or not that legislator will, pass that law, that's different story. But we are progressing a legislative proposal for that. Now, back to this project, is this procurement design bill, progressive design build is an option. At this moment, I would say no, mainly because typical progressive design build, you start at stage, I would call it stage 0%. You want to progress your design along with the PDB, so you really can put these two teams, the team together, get the benefit of a progressive design build. I understand the most advantage of the progressive design build is you have an off-ramp. We can discuss about how we can use the traditional design build to talk about minimize your risk, okay? I know this is what you care about, how you can, minimize your risk to work with us. Give us some feedback how we can do this, either in the traditional design build or design build.
Any further questions?
I would add that once we have this forum, once we pass the two major holidays, I think we will make a decision pretty soon. All right, we're not going to leave you hanging.
Well, once again, thanks everyone for coming to our Draw One Bridge Replacement Program Industry Forum. We're right at 5 minutes of the hour, so we're still within our time slot, but I appreciate the feedback, I appreciate your attendance and attentiveness to our speakers and the materials that we've been presenting. So great to have you here. Thanks again for coming.